Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. Last week, the 2024 NASCAR season officially kicked off with what most considered one of the best Daytona 500s in recent memory. Yes, the finish was frustrating because NASCAR went full NASCAR and Fox went full Fox, and fans didn't receive a good explanation as to why William Byron was declared the winner when the video evidence clearly showed his Hendrick Motorsports teammate Alex Bowman out in front when the caution light came on. Even Fox analyst Clint Boyer said the number 48 appeared to be ahead. But the overall racing product was good. The drivers going half throttle because it was part of fuel strategy, notwithstanding. More on that in a minute. I believe these first 5 races are critical and are a huge opportunity for NASCAR as they can be a bridge for all the new fans who've tuned in from watching the Netflix docuseries Full Speed into becoming regular fans. What they see in these initial races will leave them wanting more or them just leaving altogether. For those who like the 500 and returned for a second helping on Sunday at Atlanta, they weren't disappointed. They didn't see a good race. They saw a race that was historic on multiple levels and ended with one of the best photo finishes in the 76 years of the sport. How wild a race was it? In most NASCAR races, the television broadcast at some point later in the competition will display the cars that have been involved in accidents. At Atlanta, they displayed the number of cars that hadn't been involved in crashes. It was 11, and that was with 60 laps to go. 4 more cars eventually joined that list. However, before we get into the details of the race, I want to go back to Saturday for what Kyle Busch had to say in the media center. Old Rowdy might have a different persona these days and is regularly receiving cheers instead of boos driving for Richard Childress Racing, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have an opinion. One reporter asked him about the hot topic from the week before on the 500 and drivers going less than full throttle as part of a fuel strategy. Unsurprisingly, Busch didn't mince words.
I believe it's a problem. The start of the race last week for the Daytona 500, we're all sitting around there running half throttle, not passing, just riding in a line. And I felt disgraceful myself being a race car driver, wanting to go fast and lead laps and win the Daytona 500. And that was our strategy that we had to employ at the start of the race because everybody was doing it. I mean, the pace, when you're running wide open and you're in the draft, your pace is probably a 46.30. We were running 49.80s, almost 50-second lap times. It was pathetic. I was like, how slow are we going to go? You know? And so I felt bad for the fans. I was like, this is not good for them.
Pretty powerful words from the 2-time champ. NASCAR Vice President of Competition Elton Sawyer said during his weekly appearance on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio this past week that the sanctioning body is looking into it and will address it in the future. We'll see what happens. From one 2-time champion to the other. Joey Logano had a rocket last week at Daytona. Sat on the pole, led a race-high 45 laps, but finished 32nd after being involved in the late big one with 8 laps to go. This week at Atlanta, second verse, same as the first. The Team Penske car was again fast, finishing second during qualifying and swapping spots with Michael McDowell from the week before at Daytona. Great start to the season, until it wasn't. 24 hours later, and Logano was in the headlines, but for the wrong reason, when it was revealed that the number 22 team had been penalized by NASCAR for Logano's usage of gloves during qualifying that didn't meet SFI specifications. He would be sent to the back of the field and, much worse, have to serve a pass-through penalty at the start of the race. On the reconfigured 1.5-mile track, that's a harsh penalty and meant likely going at least a lap down. Interestingly, during the broadcast, Fox showed a clip of Logano's glove and it clearly contained webbing in between the fingers. Oh, the creativity. Could there be an additional penalty? I don't know, but Tuesday is when NASCAR typically releases its full penalty report. That's also the same morning Logano makes his weekly appearance on Sirius XM. I can tell you tomorrow will be must-listen radio. You know how they say hindsight's 20/20? Looking back, I think we all should have known we were in for a wild ride in the Peach State by the end of lap 2, when Logano had shockingly improved his position on the track from dead last to 20th. Yes, 16 positions. How exactly does one go about doing that? The big one, and I do mean the big one, like biggest in Atlanta Motor Speedway history. Todd Gilliland checked up near the front of the outside lane, trying to allow his front row motorsports teammate Michael McDowell to move in front of him. Unfortunately, no one behind got the memo, and the accordion was in full effect. An AMS record 16 cars were involved in a crash that would make mayhem from the Allstate insurance commercials blush, and included Daniel Suarez, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, and Alex Bowman. As Kevin Harvick so beautifully described on the broadcast, what a mess. And we were just getting started. Chris Buescher and Denny Hamlin both joined in on the fun laps later, having individual spins in that first stage, which McDowell won. As it turns out, stage 1 was just the appetizer. In the second stage, our main course, we flipped the script, with numerous teams staying out at the stage caution after previously pitting on one of the earlier cautions and gaining track position. The top 5 in stage 2 started with Todd Gilliland, Logano, Chris Buescher, Zane Smith, and Corey LaJoie. Yes, Logano had moved up to the position that he was slated to start the race, but you know, Operation Webbed Glove. When the third lane came in, I remembered back to the 2 previous races on Saturday and how there was no action like this. Single lane was the norm, not in this one, and thank God. The second stage had comers and goers. Brad Keselowski announced his presence and moved forward. Kevin Harvick also mentioned in the Fox booth that this is as wild a race as you're going to see on the schedule. He had no idea. Another bizarre incident happened when Michael McDowell locked it up on the long pit road and got into William Byron. Surprisingly, with both cars moving toward the track, NASCAR didn't put out a caution. But officials didn't have any problems handing out speeding penalties like candy. During that same stop, I know of at least 6 drivers who got busted. And if things couldn't get any weirder, the 100-lap second stage went 99.5 caution-free laps. That's because Logano got tight and drove it into the wall on the last lap of the stage and collected Chris Buescher and Denny Hamlin. Austin Cindric won the stage and was followed by Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, and Martin Truex Jr., rounding out the top 5. The final stage was more of the same action with passing taking place all around the track and the return of more cautions. One of the more notable yellows happened on lap 199 when it appeared that Ross Chastain gave Chase Elliott an aggressive shove from behind that sent the number 9 Hendrick Motorsports car for a spin. During that caution, Elliott's teammate and Daytona 500 champion William Byron was not happy with officials because they were telling him he was lining up in the incorrect position and needed to drop back deeper into the field on the restart. Take a listen.
Put the 24 back behind the 34. That's where he belongs. That's where he was frozen. He is not wave around eligible. Stop the 24. Stop the 24. Put him back. Stop. Have him drop back. He's on the lead lap. He'll drop all the way back to the tail. He'll be dropping back behind the 77.
Yeah, they're saying we have to stop. We're not wave eligible. They said they just made the call 30 seconds ago. Have to stop. Let the field go by. There's not just me complaining. Yeah, they said I can't do anything up here. Sacco said we have to deal with it after the race.
Yeah, I can't even make it on gas now. I could have pitted now. I can at least make it on gas. Now I f***ing can't.
I'm with you. I agree. They were just making us stop or they were going to park us. So I can't do anything. Sacco said we have to talk to him after the race. Hands are tied.
Byron finished the race 17th. Oh, what a difference a week makes. In the remaining laps, it was constant battling up front for the lead. The final caution came on lap 248 when Josh Berry got loose, spun, and blasted Carson Hocevar before also making contact with the sport's most popular driver for his second incident on the night. On the final restart with 6 laps to go, fans got their much-deserved dessert as Daniel Suarez started on the inside lane with Ryan Blaney on his outside. The 2023 Cup champion pulled out in front and held that position until the final trip around the 1.5-mile track, where he took the white flag with Busch and Suarez side by side right behind him. On that final lap, Kyle Busch received a big push from Bubba Wallace down the backstretch, which propelled the number 8 forward, and he shot a gap that had opened up in between Blaney and Suarez, who were running up front. As they made that final turn, It was 3 wide and a beautiful sight to see. The number 99 Trackhouse car edged out Blaney by 3/1000ths of a second for the third closest finish in NASCAR history. By the way, did you know that NASCAR has rules in place if the photo finish isn't sufficient in determining the winner? Fox's Bob Pockrass tweeted about it after the race, and I thought it was interesting to see that the first tiebreaker would be the car that led the greatest number of laps, and the second tiebreaker would be the greatest number of laps competed in second, third place, and so on. Interesting stuff. That photo finish capped off a historic day at Atlanta Motor Speedway that featured 3 and 4 wide racing, the biggest accident ever, most number of cars involved in incidents, and most lead changes in a race. In other words, action all day long. Austin Cindric finished 4th, followed by Bubba Wallace, who is the only driver to earn a top 5 result in the first 2 races of the 2024 season. Speaking of those 2 races, I decided to go back and do a little research on last year and what the points look like after the first 2 races of the season to see what it might tell us about who makes the playoffs. It's pretty interesting. Take a look. The top 16 in driver points after the second race last year looked very similar to the start of the 2023 playoffs. There were 4 drivers, Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, Corey LaJoie, and Chase Elliott, that were inside the top 16 that didn't make the playoffs. 4. Those spots were eventually filled by William Byron, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Bubba Wallace. And this year, after 2 races, the top 16 in points is comprised of many of your expected drivers. The notables missing, and all of them made the playoffs last year, include Hamlin and McDowell, who are just outside the cut line, plus Reddick and the 2 drivers who've had fast cars the first 2 weeks, but didn't get the results, with Joey Logano at 33rd and Brad Keselowski in 36th. I know there are no guarantees, but it's a safe bet that Hamlin, Reddick, and Logano all make it to the postseason on wins alone, considering all of them were multi-time winners the last couple of seasons. The one intriguing one is the number 6 of Keselowski. Sunday's race extended his winless race streak to 100. Now, there's plenty of time for the RFK Racing driver, co-owner, and the others to climb their ways out of the holes they've dug for themselves. A single win will cure those ills. But it's interesting to see where they stand just 2 races in and how that small snapshot in time can provide us a somewhat clear glimpse into the future. All right, guys, that's all for today. Really appreciate you checking out today's episode and the recap of Atlanta. I want to hear your thoughts on what we talked about. What do you think about Kyle Busch's words on the season opening race at Daytona? What did you think about Logano's penalty and the creativity of the Webb glove? And lastly, let me know what you thought about the race and specifically that wild finish. Was that the best finish you remember seeing? Just a reminder, if you want to see what I have to say about this week's race, go check out my written work at heavy.com. Also, don't forget to sign up for my weekly email newsletter at beatenandbangin.com. Plus, check out the newly remodeled website and let me know what you think. Thanks again, as always, for supporting the channel, and have a great rest of your day.